Good morning, Michael. How are you today?
Hey, Leanne, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
So you're in the hot seat again today. I am going to be interviewing you. We've been, a few interviews now where we switch roles. So today it's my turn to ask you some questions. But for listeners who are joining us for the first time, why don't we each start off by just giving a little bit of information about our background and why we're here together. So why don't you start first?
Okay, great. Name is Michael Schuster. I'm a realtor in the Greater Toronto area. I've been in real estate for many more years than I can remember. And I do work with all types of clients, ranging from first-time buyers, investors, happy families with, kids and pets and all that kind of thing, all stages of life, empty nesters, baby boomers. I also have some areas of real estate that I specialize in. I have specialized training, knowledge, and credentials. So one of the few of those are divorce. I'm Ontario's first divorce real estate specialist, which is, of course, Leanne, how yours and my path crossed. Being, well, you're going to tell everybody what you do, but that's where we met. So that's what I do. Why don't you tell everybody what you do?
Well, I am a divorce lawyer or a family law lawyer, and I am a partner at a firm in downtown Toronto called Brody Thorning LLP. And I focus exclusively on family law. So, divorce is one of the things, separation, child support, spousal support, equalization, property division, all of those types of things. And I spent many years as a Crown attorney as well, as a prosecutor, the lead prosecutor in the area of domestic violence in the Toronto West office. So I also have a lot of background dealing with victims of abuse and both physical abuse as well as emotional and psychological abuse. So I bring a lot of that to my practice. Now, today we're going to be chatting, of course, about the divorce and real estate, the topics that bring us together. Your background, you have this special training, as you mentioned, as a divorce specialist, which a lot of realtors don't have. And I do know, you obviously work with all types of clients, but you do have that particular expertise. So when you're dealing with a client who is going through a divorce, and all of the ones that you've dealt with over the years, have you, as a result of this, developed special systems or practices or you know ways of handling things within your office and your staffing and all of that, that in a divorce situation, you bring to the table and it makes it unique from another type of situation?
Absolutely. Every single one is unique. You know, one of the things that when I'm educating people on how to hire a professional, and in most cases hire a realtor that's qualified to sell a matrimonial home in divorce, or any type of realtor or any type of professional for that matter, I always say most people can get an education, and book smarts is very important, but you also want somebody with what we call transactional experience, people who've walked the walk, not just learn how to talk the talk. And in divorce, as you know, although most people go through the same cycles and the same emotions, and there's a lot of things that you and I can tell people how the process is going to go. The steps along the way and the details of every process is different for every single one. Like you said, every single one is unique in more than one way. And so when it comes to real estate, yes, I not only have learned and then redeveloped different ways of staging a property, marketing a property, negotiating a property, but to your question, I've had to develop my own criteria and my own set of rules and guidelines for my own staff and my own team at my office to follow. And anytime I take a listing that is a divorce sale, as I call it, selling a matrimonial home because the owners are getting a divorce, I pull out and review those criteria and the guidelines with my own staff and make sure that they're briefed on every single aspect of that unique listing, because I've seen a lot of curveballs. Yeah.
Well, and have you had a specific, you mentioned curveballs, so have you had a specific situation that, was a real learning experience that, caused you to, develop these specific systems and whatnot?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wish I could just sit here and say, no, no, I have a crystal ball and I see everything, but that's not true. I've learned from the School of Hard Knocks. So I had one make you scratch your head. I had a client listed a house a couple of years ago, just north of where I am. And so here's what happened. The seller, well, they're both my seller. The wife was the breadwinner. She was earning an income. He was unemployed, the husband. She had a 6-month-old baby. She left him. She moved out because she was afraid of him. She alleges he was a narcissist. He had narcissistic personality disorder. So although I'm not a mental health professional and I can't confirm it, I can say he displayed characteristics of that, which for people who don't know, one of the biggest things about a narcissist is they have control issues. So what happened is she moved out. We listed the house. I went, through a marathon to convince him to trust me because she wanted to hire me, but that's okay. He trusted me. So here's what happened. There was a court order that he is not to interfere with the sale of the house because they suspected he would try. And he was very proud to show me this court order. So I'm going to start with issue number one on that scenario. When I don't, for viewers that may or may not have looked for a new home in recent years, usually you call your agent, you book an appointment, you wait for confirmation, and then you go. And that waiting for confirmation is the listing agent's office, the brokerage has to call whoever's in the home and make sure, is 4 o'clock today okay? So he had decided to call my office behind my back without me knowing and tell them to put his listing on. First of all, I say his listing because he was living in the home. It's their listing, but he forgot about that. So he said, put it in the listing on auto confirm so that anytime anybody wants to see this house, they will never be refused. They can get in instantly. There's no problem. And he thought he was doing himself a solid because that way he could go to a judge and say, I didn't interfere. In fact, I made it easy. There's a problem with that. Somebody's driving along the street, sees a for sale sign on the lawn, and calls my office and says, can we see, 123 whatever street? My office says, sure, it's auto confirm. Buyers go in. Well, what if he's in the shower? What if he's sleeping? What if he's not ready to receive, because he's in the house isn't vacant. So that can be awkward, violation of a lot of things. That's just not how things are done. But he didn't go through me so that I could explain. He went behind my back. But then it got much more serious. And what happened was, excuse me, even though she had moved out, because she was paying the mortgage, she was paying the property taxes, she was paying for everything, she wanted and deserved, she had a right to know every time there's a showing. She's not living in the house anymore. She's hired me to list. If she goes to live at her parents' house for a couple of weeks and doesn't hear anything from me, she's going to wonder what the heck's going on. A lot of things realtors do behind the scenes, the sellers don't see, especially if they don't live in the house. So basically, we had it set up, and I ordinarily do this for divorcing clients, is because they don't live in the same house or they don't communicate freely with each other, is anytime there's a showing, if it were you, Leanne, and you listed your house for sale and it was a divorce situation, you and your soon-to-be ex would both get an email from my secretary or my assistant. There's a showing at 4 o'clock today. There's a showing at 3 o'clock today. There's a showing tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So that you both know how much action and how much activity we're getting on the listing. So she called me about 10 days later, maybe 2 weeks later, and said, do we need to lower the price? We haven't had a showing in 2 weeks. I said, so-and-so, we've had 86 showings in the last 2 weeks. She said, I haven't gotten a notification for any of them. I said, I'm 100% sure that I put your email address on there with his, and I verified that it was spelled correctly. She said, I was getting emails for the first couple of days and then they just stopped. I thought the showing stopped. She said, did he go behind your back and tell your staff? I said, no way. No way anybody goes behind my back and tells my staff what to do. And then I hung up the phone. I said, let me check. I hung up the phone, and just for fun, just to make sure I, covered all bases, I went to my employee who takes reservation requests. I said, for such and such an address, did so and so do that? So she checks the comments on the computer and she says, yeah, he called on such and such a date and said she's not to be notified. So after I cooled down and thought about it and took a few deep breaths, would have liked to have a drink, but it was work time. It made me realize that the world of divorce is evolving faster than many things in life, certainly faster than the way real estate is done. And furthermore, this particular employee of mine it's slightly relevant, she was young, she was in her 20s, never been married, never been through divorce, and not a licensed realtor. So although I was fuming mad, I have to direct my anger at the appropriate source. It was directed at him because I can't get mad at her because she's just trying to provide great service. And she didn't know the repercussions or the implications that can come from doing such a change. And so I calmly educated her that I represent both clients, and there are court orders, and there's a lot of legal stuff going on behind the scenes here that we don't know about. So what happens if now she decides to sue our brokerage or sue me because I'm biased and favoring him, or who knows what type of lawsuit she might conjure up? The bottom line is I owe my fiduciary duties and equal services to both sellers. They're both my clients. So I went to the broker manager, and I said, I'm implementing a new process for me, and I think it would do you well for everybody else in the brokerage, is first of all, advise all staff who handle the computers, the appointments, the listings, the bookings, that no changes can be made to a listing unless it's approved by the listing agent, because it's the listing agent who is the expert, and it is their butt on the line, and it is they who have the training and know what's going on behind the scenes. So that's number one. But then, like I said, I set up a whole system and a protocol so that every time I get a divorce, because everyone's different, I'll sit down with my own small team of staff in the office, and I'll say, here's a new listing. Here's what's going on. They are speaking, they aren't speaking. One's moved out, one hasn't moved out. And I have a checklist, and all of these things, check, check, check. All changes go through me. This is what is in our system. This is right, what you can say, what you can't say, just so that taking a few minutes to make sure my staff know what's going on and what they can and can't do, make sure that nobody's rights are violated, there's no bias, and it's a smooth, safe transaction, and nobody can manipulate me or my team. So yeah, it's actually happened a few times, but that was the first one that caused me to say we need to implement a system here. And so that system has now saved our behinds a few times, because in acrimonious or high conflict divorces, very often, as you know probably better than I do, one spouse will often try to gain leverage over the process more than the other. And often they'll use the real estate as that leverage, because lawyers or other people, they pay by the hour. The real estate, I only get paid when the house is sold. But the real estate is, for most people, usually their single largest asset, representing the most amount of money. So whether they're fighting for control, or they think they might be able to get more money out of it, which is obviously not true, because some people don't know what they don't know. Usually people try their shenanigans when it comes to the real estate. So yeah, I've had to implement different systems to make sure that there are no shenanigans.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And, lots of things there for people to think about. So all the more
Mhm.
reason why someone who is, going to be selling their matrimonial home should make sure that they use an agent who, is aware that those types of things can happen and can, prevent them from happening by having the proper systems and protocols and whatnot in place.
Yeah. And the irony in that situation was he did it, or he alleges he did it because he wanted to be able to prove to he felt like he was the victim, which is another symptom of NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. But regardless of that, he thought that if she ever took him to court, he could say, I didn't interfere with the sale. Anyway, when I called him and let him know that that was not okay, I said, by the way, if I'm ever called to testify, you did interfere with my listing, and I am going to let both family lawyers know. As you know, we work closely together on behalf of mutual clients when it's needed. I said, by the way, I'm not looking to stir the pot. You and your wife are still my client, but the lawyers need to know everything, and I don't hide anything. That's one of the reasons people respect me and hire me, is because of my integrity. So you can't influence me, you can't go behind my back, and you can't manipulate the law or the system. The lawyers are going to know about it. So that's ultimately what happened.
Well, thank you, Michael. As usual, for some great information. I'm sure I definitely learned something, and I'm sure people who listen to
Glad to.
today's chat will learn something as well. So
Great.
thank you,
My
and
pleasure.
have a great day.
You too. Always nice to chat.